Hey there, gamblers. Welcome back to Gambling Flow, your daily dose of everything gambling. I'm Russell Kane,
And I'm Fiona Blake.
and we are ready to dive deep into some fascinating gambling lore. Today's deep dive is all about the late, great comedian, Norm Macdonald.
Norm
You
Macdonald.
might know him for his dry wit and legendary appearances on, well, everywhere. SNL, late-night talk shows.
His deadpan. Oh, brilliant.
But beyond the stand-up stage, Norm was a notorious gambler.
Oh, really? I didn't know that about him.
His stories about high-stakes bets and just hilarious casino misadventures are the stuff of legend.
He had a way of finding humor even in the most painful losses, which is a skill in itself.
Oh, absolutely. Like the time he took his mother and his aunt to Las Vegas.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine. Finally makes it to Vegas, ready to hit the casino, mom and aunt in tow, excited for a family vacation.
Sounds lovely.
You'd think, except Norm being Norm, manages to lose all of his money before they even get to the hotel room.
Oh, no.
And get this, his last dollars vanished on a blackjack hand. He was dealt 2 aces,
Oh.
but he couldn't afford to split them.
Oh.
Hit twice, got 2 tens, boom, lost the bet.
Talk about a bad beat. And losing with 2 aces is especially painful because splitting them is almost always the statistically advantageous play in blackjack.
Of course, yeah, splitting those aces gives him 2 separate hands, greatly increasing his chances of winning.
Exactly.
But Norm, ever the impulsive gambler, couldn't resist the temptation to hit, even knowing it was probably the wrong move.
It's a classic example of how emotions can sometimes override logic in gambling.
Yeah,
You get caught up in the heat of the moment,
ghrelin.
the adrenaline rush, and
Yeah.
you make decisions that, in hindsight, you probably wouldn't have made otherwise.
And it's that impulsive streak in Norm that really makes his gambling stories so compelling. Like the time he made this wild bet with a journalist, Michael Kaplan, in Vegas. Norm had just earned $40,000 from a stand-up gig
Wow.
and decided he's going to try and double it at the craps table or lose it all naturally.
High stakes indeed. And what was his game plan?
He was a big fan of the don't strategy in craps.
Interesting. For those unfamiliar, the don't strategy is essentially betting against the shooter.
Right.
You're wagering that they will roll a losing combination. It can be a bit controversial because you're essentially rooting for everyone at the table to lose.
Yeah.
You're siding with the house.
You're the bad guy.
Exactly. Some players see it as bad etiquette, especially if the table is hot and everyone's winning.
Right.
It goes against that shared sense of camaraderie and excitement that often develops among players.
But Norm, in typical fashion, embraced the contrarian approach.
Yeah.
He even called it his pensioner system, which, considering his aggressive gambling style, is quite ironic.
It really is. That's Norm for you, always playing by his own rules, even if it meant defying convention or going against the odds.
And, as luck would have it, the craps table was on fire that night.
Oh, no.
Everyone was winning except Norm.
Oh.
His pensioner system was backfiring spectacularly.
You know, this raises an interesting point about the psychology of gambling. The don't strategy, by its nature, often leads to more frequent losses,
Right.
even if the payouts can be slightly higher. And this can be particularly challenging for someone like Norm, who is known for his impulsiveness and thrill-seeking behavior.
That's a good point. The constant losing, instead of deterring him, might have fueled his desire to keep playing, to chase those losses, try and prove his system right.
It's a common trap that many gamblers fall into, this idea that the next bet will be the one that turns it all around, but often it just leads to deeper losses and further frustration.
Yeah, and it's easy to forget, especially with all the humor surrounding Norm's stories, that losing money in gambling can be a very real and painful experience.
Absolutely, it can trigger feelings of shame, regret, and even despair.
Yeah.
And while Norm might have had a way of making light of those losses, it's important to remember that gambling can have serious consequences.
It can, which is why responsible gambling practices are so crucial. Setting limits, understanding the odds, and recognizing the potential risks are essential for anyone who enjoys a good wager. But back to Norm. He really disliked it when people would tell him that losing money didn't matter because he was rich and famous.
That's a misconception we often hear.
Yeah.
People assume that wealth somehow immunizes you from the emotional impact of losing. But the truth is, the thrill of the game, the emotional swings of winning and losing, those things don't disappear just because you have money.
If anything, those emotions might be amplified when the stakes are higher.
Precisely. And it seems like Norm, despite his comedic persona, genuinely felt the sting of those losses. Regardless of his financial status, it's a reminder that gambling is a powerful force that can affect anyone regardless of their wealth or fame.
So at that craps table, Norm predictably ended up losing the entire $40,000.
Oh.
And then in a moment of desperation, he asked Kaplan to loan him $10,000.
Oh, dear. Did Kaplan give in?
Reluctantly, he loaned Norm $1,000.
Oh.
And wouldn't you know it, Norm lost that almost immediately.
That sounds like a classic example of what gamblers call tilt. It's when frustration and anger take over after a series of losses.
Right.
Leading to poor decision-making and even bigger losses.
Like your rational mind goes out the window and you're just driven by this desperate need to win back what you've lost, regardless of the consequences.
Exactly. And in Norm's case, his impulsive nature might have made him particularly susceptible to tilt.
But here's where the story takes a turn. Kaplan, as it happens, was going through some personal struggles of his own at the time, completely unrelated to gambling.
This sounds intriguing, what was happening in Kaplan's life.
He was having a real nightmare trying to get his daughter into a good pre-K program in New York City.
Oh.
It seemed impossible to find a good school with an available spot.
The dreaded pre-K application process, every parent's nightmare, especially in a competitive city like New York.
Right. Stressful enough without having to deal with your gambling buddy who just lost $41,000. But as with most things in Norm's life, seemingly unrelated events have a way of intertwining in unexpected ways.
I'm on the edge of my seat. Tell me more.
Well, both Kaplan and Norm happened to be at the World Series of Poker. Around this same time, there was a media tournament going on, free to enter, with a $10,000 prize for charity.
A free tournament with a charitable donation, that's a nice way to combine poker skills and good deeds.
Absolutely. Kaplan decided to play, but Norm, being Norm, wasn't interested in a tournament where there was nothing to win for himself.
He wouldn't see much point in risking embarrassment without the potential for a big personal payout.
Exactly. But here's where things get really interesting. Kaplan ends up deep in the tournament, facing a crucial hand. He's got a monster hand, raises the bet. And Norm, sitting next to him, suddenly shoves all of his chips in.
Oh, wow.
It's a bold move, completely unexpected.
Was Norm trying to bully him out of the hand?
It's hard to say. Remember, Norm wasn't really invested in this tournament.
Right.
He wasn't playing for the money.
True, but he was known for his unpredictable nature, his love of shaking things up.
Absolutely. Kaplan, faced with this all-in bet from Norm, decides to call, reveals his hand. A full house, it's a powerful hand, very likely to win.
And what did Norm have? Did he have anything at all?
That's the thing. He just mucked his cards, meaning he tossed them in without revealing them, a half smile on his face, and he walks away from the table seemingly unfazed, heading straight for the craps tables.
It's almost as if he intentionally folded, knowing he was beat to help Kaplan win the hand.
That's what some people speculated. They even accused him of chip dumping, which in poker means intentionally losing chips to another player. It can be a form of collusion, sometimes used for strategic reasons.
But in this case, it didn't feel malicious, did it? It felt more like a spontaneous act of generosity, almost a whimsical gesture.
Exactly. It was classic Norm, unpredictable, enigmatic, and surprisingly kind, and it had a huge impact on Kaplan's game. He went on to win the entire tournament, securing that $10,000 for charity.
And that money, as we know, went straight to Kaplan's daughter's school, securing her place in a good pre-K program. Talk about a chain reaction of unexpected events.
It really highlights the interconnectedness of life, how seemingly random occurrences can converge in surprising ways.
And it shows that even in Norm's world of high-stakes gambling and unpredictable behavior, there was a capacity for genuine kindness, a willingness to help others, even if it was in an unconventional way.
It's a reminder that people are complex, full of contradictions, and Norm, more than most, embodied that complexity.
That did.
He could be cynical and jaded one minute, surprisingly generous the next.
He was a true original, a comedic genius who defied categorization.
And his gambling stories offer a glimpse into that multifaceted personality, that unique way of seeing the world.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Norm Macdonald and his gambling adventures, it's clear that he was more than just a comedian who loved to gamble.
His stories weren't just about winning or losing money. They were about the human experience, the thrill of the game, the absurdity of life, and the enduring power of laughter, even in the face of defeat.
He taught us that it's okay to take risks, to embrace the unexpected, and to find humor even in our mistakes. And perhaps most importantly, he reminded us that sometimes the most rewarding bets are the ones we place on kindness, generosity, and the unpredictable beauty of life.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
It leaves us with a lot to ponder.
Indeed it does. But for now, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Right back after this. All right, You've piqued my curiosity. Spill the beans. What kind of unorthodox blackjack strategies did Norm employ?
Well, let's just say he wasn't exactly playing by the book.
Oh, really?
From what I've gathered, he was notorious for making moves that would make seasoned blackjack players cringe.
Like what? Give us some examples.
Think hitting on 18, doubling down on hard 12s, all sorts of things that go against basic blackjack strategy.
He was almost playing anti-strategy. It's fascinating how he seemingly embraced the randomness and defied the conventional wisdom of the game.
It was like he was more interested in the thrill of the unknown, the
Yep.
possibility of bucking the odds, rather than making the statistically correct play.
You know, that actually speaks to a certain personality type we often see in gamblers. Some are drawn to the calculated, strategic aspect of games like poker, where skill and decision-making play a significant role.
Right. They thrive on analyzing probabilities, reading opponents, making calculated risks.
Exactly. But others, like Norm, it seems, are more attracted to the element of chance, the adrenaline rush of pure gambling.
Right.
They're less concerned with minimizing losses and more focused on the excitement of the unpredictable.
It's like they're not just playing against the house, they're challenging fate itself. And for them, a big win achieved through unconventional means might feel even more rewarding.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. It's about the narrative they create around their gambling experiences. A calculated strategic win might be satisfying, but a lucky against the odds victory becomes a legendary story to tell.
And Norm was, above all, a master storyteller. He could take even the most mundane events and turn them into hilarious anecdotes, so imagine what he could do with his wild gambling tales.
His blackjack strategies, or lack thereof, were just another source of material for his comedic genius.
Yeah.
He could poke fun at his own poor decisions, turn a bad beat into a punchline, and make us laugh along with him, even if we were shaking our heads at his choices.
He had a way of turning his losses into something relatable, reminding us that even when we mess up, even when we make questionable choices, there's always a way to find the humor in it all.
And I think that's a valuable lesson both in gambling and in life. It's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of winning, the fear of losing, the pressure to make the right decisions. But sometimes it's okay to embrace the chaos, to laugh at our mistakes, and to enjoy the ride, even if it takes us off the beaten path.
That's a great point. It's about finding joy in the unexpected, the unpredictable, the moments that defy logic and expectation.
Exactly. And Norm, with his unique perspective and comedic brilliance, reminded us that sometimes it's the detours, the blunders, the outrageous bets that make for the most memorable and entertaining stories.
So while we might not recommend hitting on 18 or doubling down on a hard 12 at the blackjack table,
Oh,
we can certainly appreciate the entertainment value and perhaps even the life lessons embedded in Norm's unconventional gambling style.
absolutely. He challenged our assumptions about how the game should be played and showed us that there's always more than one way to approach a bet, a game, or even life itself.
And ultimately, isn't that what makes gambling so compelling? The endless possibilities, the thrill of the unknown, the chance to create your own narrative, even if it ends up being a cautionary tale told with a side of laughter.
I think you've summed it up perfectly. Gambling at its core is a form of entertainment, a way to engage with risk and reward, and to test our luck and our wits. And whether we're playing by the book or embracing a more unorthodox approach, the most important thing is to remember to have fun, to stay within our limits, and to appreciate the stories that unfold along the way.
Well said. And speaking of stories, I think it's time we revisited that heartwarming tale about Norm inadvertently helping Kaplan win that poker tournament and secure his daughter's pre-K spot.
I'm all ears.
It really highlights that even in his most chaotic gambling moments, there was a surprising generosity and, dare I say, a touch of fate at play.
Let's delve back into that story.
Okay, so Kaplan's deep in that World Series of Poker Media Tournament. Remember, it's free to enter, $10,000 prize for charity.
Right, high pressure.
He's facing a crucial hand, and Norm, not one for charity tournaments, just happens to be sitting right next to him at the table.
This is where it gets interesting.
Okay, so picture this. Kaplan's got a strong hand, raises the bet, feeling good. Suddenly, Norm shoves all his chips in.
Whoa, out of nowhere.
Bold move, completely unexpected.
What's he doing?
It's hard to say. Remember, Norm, he wasn't really invested in this tournament.
Right.
He wasn't playing for the money.
True, but again, his unpredictable nature, he loved to shake things up.
Kaplan, faced with this all-in bet from Norm, decides to call, reveals his hand. A full house, pretty powerful hand, very likely to win.
And Norm, what did he have? Did he have anything at all?
That's the thing. He just mucked his cards, just tossed them in without revealing them, half smile on his face, walked away from the table, seemingly unfazed, and headed straight back to, you guessed it, the craps tables.
So he basically just gave Kaplan the win.
Yeah, some people even accused him of chip dumping.
Right, intentionally losing chips to another player.
Which can be a form of collusion, sometimes used for strategic reasons,
Yeah.
but in this case, it really didn't feel malicious.
It felt like almost like a random act of kindness.
A whimsical gesture. Classic Norm. Unpredictable, enigmatic, surprisingly kind. And it had a huge impact on Kaplan's game. He went on to win the entire tournament, securing that $10,000 for charity.
And that money going straight to Kaplan's daughter's school?
Securing her place in that pre-K program. Talk about a chain of unexpected events.
It's like something out of a movie.
It really is. It
Yeah.
shows that even in Norm's world of high-stakes gambling, unpredictable behavior, there was a capacity for genuine kindness, a willingness to help others, even if it was in a really unconventional way.
And the thing is, you just never really knew with Norm. He was full of contradictions, cynical 1 minute, generous the next.
Yeah, a true original, a comedic genius who defied easy categorization.
And his gambling stories, they give us this little glimpse into that personality, that way of seeing the world.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Norm Macdonald and his gambling, it's clear he was more than just a comedian who loved to gamble.
His stories weren't just about winning or losing money, right? They were about the human experience, the thrill of the game, the absurdity of life, and the power of laughter, even when you're facing defeat.
He taught us it's okay to take risks, to embrace the unexpected, to find the humor in our mistakes, and maybe most importantly, he reminded us that sometimes the most rewarding bets are the ones we place on kindness, generosity, and the unpredictable beauty of life.
Couldn't have put it better myself.
Well, that is all the time we have for today on Gambling Flow. I'm Russell Kane.
And I'm Fiona Blake.
And we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the wild world of Norm Macdonald's gambling escapades. Remember, gamble responsibly, stay within your limits, and until next time, may the odds be ever in your favor.